Hey everybody, today I'm going to be doing a 6-month recap, taking a look at all of the games that I've played so far in 2024. I'm going to share some very brief thoughts about them and probably give them a rating out of 10 as well. I will be going through these letter by letter to hopefully give you some organisation, but apologies, I'm not going to be putting any graphics or anything like that up because it will take me a very long time to do so. This is just a bit of a general overview to talk about some highlights and some lowlights. Now, before I get started on these games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer. And if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. And I should say there is some construction work going on outside, so if there's any background noise, then I apologise for that. But let's get started. Only one game under the A category, and that is Encore. Encore, a Sebastian Pauchon game, has a bit of a Splendor vibe to it. For me, it felt very flat. I did not enjoy it at all. Give that on about a 3 or a 4 out of 10. On to the Bs then. By the vote, I wanted to like this one, this kind of real-time bidding game. It was fine. I thought the real-time part was pretty much pointless. Give that one maybe a 5 out of 10. Babel, so this one most recently featured on my my ranking video. Really enjoyed this older Rosenberg game. Very confrontational, like it a lot. 7 out of 10. Blockers, kind of a family-friendly game where you're trying to connect things together. A very main, kind of mass market feeling. Maybe a 5.5 out of 10, maybe a 6. Balloon Pop, kind of a puzzly style, Tetris style game. For me, it felt very generic. Maybe 4 out of 10 for that one. Awkward Guests, the Berwick Cases. So this is the 2-player exclusive version of Awkward Guests. I did a Kickstarter preview for this one. I liked it. I thought the setup was a little bit too onerous, but it's good if you want to get into that head-to-head competitive way of playing Awkward Guests. You know, maybe a 6 out of 10 for that one. Big Top. This one kind of caught me by surprise. I like this one, an auction-style game. As you are trying to bid certain amounts to fill up your cards to actually score them. That one, maybe a 6.5 out of 10. On to the C's then. Caper Europe. This one was a nice, pleasant surprise. Tug-of-war style game, gorgeous artwork, lovely production. Looking 7.5 out of 10. Cascadero, one of the biggest disappointments for me. Very recently reviewed this. Not a terrible game by any means, but I expected more from a Knizia route building game. 5.5 out of 10. Cascadito, the roll and write version of it. Much preferred this one. For me, it felt much better suited to the gameplay mechanisms. I'd give this one maybe 6.5 out of 10. Caesar and Cleopatra, an older game from the 90s of the Cosmos 2-player line. Tug of war, kind of majorities. Some really strong aspects, some pretty weak aspects through the use of these pretty heavy-handed action cards. 5 out of 10 for that one. Chess a Tete. This is a card game version of chess. It was pretty bad, to be honest, so sad to say that was probably about a 3 out of 10. We have the Clone Wars, which is the Star Wars themed version of Pandemic. I'm lukewarm on Pandemic at the best of times, and I preferred the original Pandemic over the Star Wars themed one. This one I'd probably give a 4 out of 10. Cursed Court. Quite a unique game as you're betting on the potential combinations of people coming up on this board, using a bit of deduction, sharing information with your neighbours. 6.5, 7 out of 10 for that one. Carson City. So Carson City, this is a game that I've wanted to play for a long time. This Wild Western themed worker placement game. Loads of cool mechanisms. A good hybrid of the kind of Ameritrashy games with Euro foundations. Liked a lot about this one. Excited to play it some more. 7.5 out of 10. Circus Flocati, classic Knizia push your luck game. 6.5 out of 10. Claim It, another push your luck game mixed with some area control. Has a lot of similarities to Can't Stop, but yeah, this one's cool. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. On to the D's then. So we have Dropolta, definitely one of the biggest surprises of the year so far. So this is a Oink game, but it's a dexterity game where you have random components in your hand and you're trying to drop specific ones based on this card. Very cool, very fun. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Diatoms. I wish I played this one some more actually. So I actually did a preview for this one. It was a puzzly style game with some tile placement and trying to populate your board with these really wonderful shapes and colours, trying to create symmetries and so on. If you like these puzzly style games, this is one to take a look at. Give that one probably a 6.5 out of 10. Gin. So Gin, an old school feeling Euro. Lots of mini games coming together, trying to capture and bottle these gins. Again, 6.5 out of 10 for that one. The Duke. Classic abstract strategy game. Feels a bit like chess, a bit like war chest. This one for me was a bit too heavy on the variables because you had to memorize what all the different pieces could do, which sadly didn't make me want to play the game as much as I probably should do. I'd give this one a 6 out of 10. Distilled, a pretty involved worker placement game as you're trying to brew these different drinks. Some of the mechanisms felt a little bit surplus to requirements for me. Lovely production though, but still pretty generic feeling. I'd give that one maybe a 5 out of 10. Devon, abstract strategy game, trying to create these towers, moving around this big grid, trying to stay connected to these red pieces, and if you don't, you remove them from the board. A very cool game, 7 out of 10. Dr. Panic, so this one's one of the wild games on the list. It's a child's game really, but you're doing all these real-time activities, racing around to try to get them done before the time expires. Very silly, but very fun. Maybe a 5 out of 10 for that one. Donuts, so a Cathala abstract strategy game. It feels quite a lot like Othello as you're moving around this grid, placing your pieces, trying to create 5 in a row, but you can convert other pieces into your own if you place them in a specific way. I like that one, maybe a 6.5 out of 10 for Donuts. Can see potential for that one to go up though. Onto the E's, we have Earth. Earth was obviously a very popular game, and I do like it a lot. For me, it feels a little bit too loose to be one of my favourites because you can pretty much do anything at all times and it always feels good. I found myself rushing a bit too much in this one, and I'm not sure if the differentiation of the cards was quite enough to hold up. I did initially rate it, I think, a 7, but now it's cooled down just a little bit, and I put it just under that at about a 6.5. Empire's End. This one is a kind of a spin on the no thanks mechanism, as you are trying to conserve your points or preserve your points from the start of the game to the end of the game. So you start with a full rack of points, but basically every round you're going to have these disasters that are going to affect you and tear your buildings down, and you're trying to overcome or mitigate that threat. I love the concept of it. I think it's a little bit too long. I will generously give it a 7, but it might be just below that in eventual terms. We have Evergreen, another game that I initially I think gave a 7. I'd probably creep it just below that now at a 6.5. Lovely twist on the photosynthesis mechanisms where you are placing your trees down, trying to get as many light points as you can based on where the sun is. Bigger trees will put smaller trees in shadows and things like that. I really like that mechanism, but I thought the interaction was a little bit lackluster in this one, when I think photosynthesis was very heavy on the interaction, maybe a bit too much so. This one was polar opposite. I would have liked to have seen that happy medium. But yeah, 6.5 out of 10 for Evergreen. Expeditions. This one's a bit of a spoiler because this one's yet to come up on a ranking video. This is a reprint of a Wolfgang Kramer game, one that I really like actually, as you and your opponents are moving these arrows around this big map of the world. The board looks amazing. I'm trying to visit these different locations, but as you're moving these arrows around, you could inadvertently visit the places that your opponents want to visit, which I think is really cool. So give that one, I'll probably give it a 7 out of 10 eventually, but right now I've put it conservatively at a 6.5. Onto F then, we have the Fisheries of Gloucester. This is a Steve Finn design, quite abstract in its nature, as you are moving these fishing vessels around, capturing fish, trying to trade them in against these contracts. A little bit rigid, felt quite not exactly very creative in its design. I would give that one probably a 5.5 out of 10. We have Footprints. So Footprints is a game that I really do like. This one has an old school Euro feel as you are playing these cards in order to move your piece along this board. Has a somewhat of a race aspect, but you are trying to collect resources on the way. Yeah, lots of Euro stuff. I like the card play. 7 out of 10 for that one, I'd say. I think it just about squeezed my top 10 of the year of 2023. Far Away. This one is a game that's got a bit of buzz. A little card-driven game as you're building up this little tableau of cards. Placing them left to right, but scoring them right to left. A nice little gimmick there. 7 out of 10. Fireball Island. This one is a gimmick. It's a game where you are using cards to move your people around this big 3D structure, and every so often these marbles will run down these chutes and potentially knock your people over. It's good for a play or two. That one, probably a 3 out of 10. Formula Fun. A racing game that's definitely flown under the radar. You're playing cards to move your cars around, trying to match the spot you're on with the cards you have in your hand. Every lap someone's going to drop off. It was pretty pedestrian. 5 out of 10 for that one, maybe a 4 out of 10. Onto the G's then, we have Gap. Gap, a quirky little card game that I really do enjoy. This one has quite a cool scoring mechanism where you are basically, or you're playing cards from your hand to collect cards from this row based on different criteria. But when you collect cards for your scoring pile, only your biggest pile will score, and your lowest valued card, or sorry, your lowest pillar will get deducted from your score. So say you had a 3 stacks of 3, they'll all count as your biggest, but if you had, say, a 3, 3 and a 2, then you'll only score 1 point because, sorry, in fact you score 4 points because your 2 biggest stacks are 6 and your smallest stack is a 2, so you take away the 2 from the 6. I probably explained that really badly, but it has quite a cool scoring mechanism. I give that one a 6.5 out of 10. Glastonbury. This one is a kind of a grid movement game. You're moving your piece around this big grid of cards, collecting things for sets. Your first one you collect is negative points, but then you can start gaining positive points. I quite liked it. Nothing special, but nothing bad. 5.5 out of 10. We have Harmonies. A game getting a bit of buzz at the moment. Another puzzly style game, collecting these wooden pieces, arranging them in certain patterns based on these scoring cards. Like this one a lot. I think it deserves some of the buzz it's getting. 7.5 out of 10. We have Havalandi. Havalandi, one of the most recent Knizia games. Building or placing these tokens on this grid, connecting routes, trying to combine them together and flip them over all at once to score a chunk of points. And for me, it feels like a classic Knizia. I really like this one, much more than, say, Cascadero. 8 out of 10 for Havalandi. Hooky, a little deduction word game. It feels a bit like Wordle, if you're familiar with that game. But it is competitive, so you're kind of racing against other people, giving them hints and so on. I like it a lot, 6.5 out of 10. We have Hygge. Hygge, a reprint of Sashi's Before the Guests Arrive. Very cute little drafting game, drafting cards based on rows or columns, and then trying to leave yourself enough time to bank those cards based on other cards you collect. But any card you have remaining in front of you at the end of the game is worth negative points. So you can't be too greedy, and you need to pace yourself quite carefully. We have Isla. This was a Kickstarter preview, or a review really, but I was sent an advanced copy. I don't think this one passed on Kickstarter. I don't think it funded. It might have funded as a print and play. It was a roll and write style game with some cool concepts, with this kind of push your luck dice system, but I don't really think it stood out too well from the rest of the pack. Maybe a 5 out of 10 for Isla or Isla. We have the Isle of Trains, a multi-use card game. This one actually surprised me quite a bit. I wasn't quite sure how I'd feel about it because I didn't know too much about it going into it, but I like that multi-use card play. There's a bit of contract fulfillment. I love that dilemma of how to utilize your cards. Are you going to use them as goods? Are you going to use them as the actual extensions? And so on. 6.5 out of 10, potential to go up for Isle of Trains. Onto the single J game now, and this is Jiraku. So Jiraku, straight up, is probably the best game I've played this year, if not top 3 for sure. This is a hybrid area control game with, I suppose you can call it trick taking, as you are playing these cards based on obviously the colours and the numbers, but the numbers will either give you action points or let you deploy troops into a particular region. You can kick other people off the board, lots of different nuances, very sophisticated game, and criminally underrated. Definitely a fantastic design. That is Jiraku. We have King's Kilt, a little kind of pyramid climbing game, trying to get your factions that are hidden to the top of the pyramid. It was fine, a 5 out of 10. We have Kodama 3D. This is a family-friendly set collection style game, trying to complete these contracts based on the construct you build with this 3D tree. It's quite cute, pretty standard stuff though. I'll probably give that one a 5 out of 10. KIENDA. This is a push your luck style game with a bit of kind of bidding, trying to not take negative points. It feels very similar to a game called No Thanks, but this one is subpar in almost every way. I'd give this one a 3 out of 10. KIENDA. This is a twist off the kind of paper, rock, scissors mechanism really, but you and your opponent are basically recreating a samurai duel, and you're simultaneously choosing these cards to kind of move around, to strike your opponent, to change your stance. It's a cool concept. You can have really good games, you can have very boring games, or just kind of non-starter games really. So it's quite unpredictable in that respect, but ultimately it just boils down to paper, rock, scissors. So I'd give that one a 5.5 out of 10. On to the L's now. We have the Lost Code. So this is a deduction game, a reprint of a game called Think Straight. And this one was it is a lovely game. I have it in my collection behind me somewhere. It really does throw the deduction game on its head, because you are basically trying to work out these numbers that are in front of you but facing away from you so your opponents can see it. And you're using these dials to guess the combined value of the particular numbers on your basically your rack. And you can be wide with your guesses but score fewer points if you're correct, or you can be super accurate and pinpoint your guess and get a ton of points if you are correct. Some cool catch-up mechanisms, very refined, streamlined to the core. I'm very impressed with Lost Code. 7.5 out of 10. We have Leaf, a game I wanted to like more than I did. Now, I do appreciate it from its kind of family-friendly aspect. You're placing these very cool leaf tiles to each other, getting action points based on the colour of the leaves and where they connect with each other. Lots of different mini games. It was good for a play or two. I thought it lacked some strategy, lacked some depth, but I want to see that leaf mechanism again for sure. I'll probably give that one a 5.5 out of 10, maybe a 6. We have Lutece, a little simultaneous bidding game, very standard stuff, set collection in its most basic form, 5 out of 10. Line It. So Line It, a game I wanted to like more than I did, a game where you are drafting cards, trying to place these cards in ascending order or descending order, collecting bonus cards if you play particular colours before your opponents do. It's fine, decision space is very low, a 5.5 out of 10. Let's crack on then. So we got onto the M's. Marabunta, wonderful little I split you choose 2-player game with some area control. Knizia at its best, 7.5 out of 10. Mystic Veil, deck building game. Instead of getting more cards, you are improving the cards you already have by placing these transparent sleeves in there. Cool concept, just feels like a standard deck builder though, 6 out of 10. Merchant's Quest. This is a game that feels old. It's like a roll and move style game, but with some Euro mechanisms through supply and demand. I liked it, I was very charmed by it, 6 out of 10. I don't think it funded on Kickstarter, unfortunately. Matches, a kind of a shedding style game with some cool twists, maybe a little bit too quirky for its own good, 6 out of 10. Match of the Century. So this is a game that I've spoken highly of recently. This is the latest kind of Paolo Mori 2-player only game that simulates a chess game, but all through cards. So it has it has a multi-use card system with a bit of tug of war, very well balanced, very well designed game actually, as you'd expect with Paolo Mori. 7.5 out of 10. Mind Up. This is a hybrid of 6 Nimmt with the Mandala scoring system. Those two things come together very well. I like it a lot. 7 out of 10. On to the ends now, only 2 of those. We have Nautilus Island. This is a set collection game with kind of a bit of a chicken mechanism to it. I was very underwhelmed, particularly because the setup was so onerous. Lots of little cards and things, considering the game was only 5 minutes long or 10 minutes long. It felt like too much work for what you were getting out of it. 5 out of 10. Number Drop. So this was another Tetris style game, but you're building these shapes with these numbers that you're writing down. It was a little bit fiddly. Some of the graphic design wasn't the best. It felt like I've played this game 100 times before. Probably 4 out of 10 for Number Drop. Onto the P's now. We have a few of these. We have Pagoda. This is a game I wanted to play for a long time, actually. I picked it up at the UK Games Expo. It's a 2-player only game where you and your opponent are playing cards to build these pagodas. The higher you build these kind of pillars on these pagodas, the more points you get. But you want to be careful not to set up your opponents with certain moves based on the cards they have. It's fine. I don't think it's the designer's best work, but it's good for a play or two. But I think the strategy is limited and you're too subject to the cards you're drawing. So I'd give that one a 5.5 out of 10. Patterns. So talking of Mandala, this is the sequel to Mandala, which is one of my favourite 2-player games of all time. This one, for me, is as good as the original Mandala, which says a lot. But it feels very different as you are moving these little discs around this board, trying to put groups together. The first group you collect are worth fewer points than the later groups you collect. So it has this race aspect to claim things. Wonderfully designed, a real cool abstract game that feels like it's going to really stand up to the test of time. That is Patterns. I'd give that one an 8.5 out of 10 for all Patterns. If I didn't mention what Juraku, I gave that rating an 8.5 out of 10 as well. We have Planet Unknown. So this is a Tetris style game, polyominoes, but when you're placing things, you're climbing tracks to give you bonuses as you go. Each board has a unique kind of rule assigned to it. I like it a lot, nice flow to it. 6.5 out of 10. We have Potato Man, Trick Taking. I hate trick taking. 3 out of 10. Pusheen. This is a stacking game, placing these cute little cat meeples and things on top of each other, racing to beat your opponent. It is what it is. It's very cute. 5 out of 10. Pueblo. Pueblo, a game that I really wanted to enjoy more than I do. Don't get me wrong. Excuse me, my throat's dried up a bit. Pueblo is, a classic, I think it's a Kramer game, Kramer and Kiesling game. This one has a cool concept as you are placing these blocks, trying to not expose your pieces as much as possible based on this piece that goes around the edge of the board. Now, I love the concept of it, I love how unique it is, but I think after you've played it a couple of times, there's not much else to see, and it's not actually a terribly fun game because it's all about kind of mitigating the points you'll suffer if somebody moves on to you. So there's a little bit of king making, I think, maybe too much for my liking, but I'm really glad I played it, and it definitely does stand on its own to being different to anything else out there. Some people are really going to love it. I liked it, but again, I don't think I'm going to go back to it much more. And this game would really benefit from playing it on a Lazy Susan because you're always looking at the structure from a 3D perspective. So I'd give that one a 6.5 out of 10. On to the Q's now. Quinn. So Quinn is a strange one, and I kind of have to put an asterisk on this one because I've only played it with some rules that the designers have come out and said, this isn't the best rule book. We've probably made it a bit convoluted. Let's make a simpler rule book and get it out there. Sadly, in fact, the game is quite cool as you are playing kind of a Stratego variant. All your pieces move in different ways through this awesome looking board, awesome looking pieces. But the rules are very fiddly. They're very overwhelming and confusing. Some of the terminology they use in the rulebook is just completely mad, and it just completely confuses you. Basically, I read a lot of rulebooks, and I felt like I was reading the bloody Silmarillion with this one. It was that confusing. So I gave this one. I'll probably give it a 4 out of 10 at this time. but the designers have reassured me that there's going to be some streamlining coming out in terms of explaining and conveying those rules, because I actually see a lot of potential here. I know that the Dice Tower did tear this one to shreds, but I think maybe they're a little bit too harsh at times. I could have given it a try or two more, and hopefully that new rulebook will fix that. We have Quicksand next. So Quicksand are a real-time game about flipping these sand timers. A cooperative one. I don't normally like cooperative games, but this one works well. 6 out of 10. Corridor, another abstract strategy game, moving your pieces across the board, trying to put up blockades between you and your opponent. I'm not quite sure I've grokked this game yet. I played it at 3 players and 2 players. I'm not quite sure it's for me. I can appreciate the simplicity of it, but the most recent game I played I didn't enjoy at all, to be honest, so I'd give that one probably a 4 out of 10. Onto the R's now. We have Raise, so definitely one of the hidden gems of this year. This is kind of a push your luck game. As you are rolling dice, then you're using cards based on those dice to move along this track, and you're going to keep on playing cards until everybody else drops out. But if you keep playing cards, you are lining the pockets of the winning player, because each card you play adds more victory points to that stack. And it's all about who can go the furthest. So do you push your luck, or do you drop out and hold on to the cards in your hand? So good. 7 out of 10. We have Rafter 5. This is another Oink dexterity game. This one I think is better than Dropolter, as you are placing these little cardboard strips out, trying to move these little people around, and keep this big structure balanced as much as possible based on these little treasure chests. Very cool. Probably the best dexterity game that I've played. 6.5 out of 10. Back to the abstract strategy games. We have the Rose King from the Cosmos line. This one is a more of a traditional abstract game, as you're trying to create groups of your particular token colour based on these cards you play. Works well. 6 out of 10. Getting there, onto the S's now. We have Starlink, quirky little party game, trying to make these drawings out of these constellations. 5 out of 10. We have Strike, dice rolling game, just rolling into a bowl, trying to get pairs and things. I hated it. Probably a 2 out of 10. Sky of Fire. So this is kind of a mass market House of the Dragon themed game. It's a deck building game that actually works fine. It actually, mechanically it works. Obviously it's not going to get supported any further with new material. It just feels like an AI generated deck building game, but it's okay. 5 out of 10. Seats of Power was another House of the Dragon game. This one probably has mechanisms more suited to the theme. Through this area control, it feels a little bit like Risk, still very generic feeling, and dragged its heels, that's for sure. Give that one a 4 out of 10. Sky Team, a cooperative game, only a 2-player cooperative game, using dice placement to try and safely land your aircraft. Works really well actually, at 6.5 out of 10. We have Stripes, a game where you are trying to manipulate these cards in front of you to make a perfect strip of a certain colour through action selection. Works better than it should, 6 out of 10. We have Stampede, simple card game, trying to build up sets in front of you before your opponents do, stealing cards from each other, from their hands, that kind of thing. It's okay at best, 4 out of 10. 7 Wonders Architects. So this is the family-friendly version of 7 Wonders. Has a very boiled down drafting system actually, where you can either draft from your right hand side or your left hand side based on who your neighbours are, and trying to construct these wonders, collect resources, collect military power. Kind of has all of these 7 Wonders tropes, but boiled down into a much simpler game, and pulls it off, that's for sure. 6.5 out of 10. We have Seasons, engine building game, rolling dice, creating combos with these cards, drafting dice, lots of cool things to like here. I found it a little bit too heavy on the front loading, where you're choosing the majority of your cards before the game even begins. I prefer to react tactically to the cards I'm drawing. So this one, I think it hurt itself for that reason. 6, maybe a 6.5 out of 10. We have Sky Towers, another card game as you're building these towers in front of you, trying to basically create 21 worth of cards, You have some cool interaction where your cards on the furthest to your left and the furthest to your right will affect those neighbours and limit the cards that they can actually place in front of themselves. Also some additional rules you can add in. I need to play this some more actually before I solidify my rating, but right now I'm sitting at around a 5.5 out of 10. We have the Seals of Cthulhu. This is a 2-player only game with some wonderful production. A bit of back and forth with some bidding on these different lovely looking cards, actually, these big tarot-sized cards activating powers. Sadly, the game seemed to end before it even began. I think I did struggle to actually extract any gameplay from this one at all. Despite having some cool bidding mechanisms, you actually never really knew what you were bidding for. I didn't like it, sadly. 3 out of 10. Onto the T's now. We have Triggs. This one is a little drafting game trying to tick off things on your sheet. And when you tick off one row of numbers, you get a bonus tick off, which can let you tick off something else. So kind of a simple flip and right style game. It's fine. 6 out of 10. We have Triqueta. This one is an adaptation of the Coloretto game. Instead of picking up chameleons and scoring your 3 best sets, in this one, you are only scoring if you get exactly 3 of a particular token. So you have to pace yourself quite carefully here, but it works very well. I like it a lot. Very charming, very fast, cool production. Yeah, not much to dislike here at all. So I'd give that one a 7 out of 10. Terra Pyramides. One of the latest Kramer and Kiesling games, has a very old school Euro feel to it, with a bit of an abstract nature, as you are placing these tiles on the board, collecting resources based on rows and columns that you're placing those tiles on, and building these pyramids. Each pyramid you build, or the higher it is, the more points you'll score. There's some variations on the rules as well. This one I think has got legs, and I'm really looking forward to sinking my teeth into that one some more. 7 out of 10. We have Taco Cat Goat Cheese, whatever it's called. This one is a simple little kind of a child's game really, just placing cards out in a certain tempo. If you match the card, then you're going to try and get down to that card before your opponents do. You know, it sounds terrible. It is terrible really, but I did have fun playing it. 4 out of 10. On to the single V game, which happens to be probably a top 2 game for me so far. This is the Veil of Eternity. This one is a little card game trying to combo these characters together to get these huge powers and things. A very cool currency mechanism, as you're limited to only having 4 coins at any time. But those values can be different, so you're always trying to maximize that currency. You're trading cards in to get points, or to get money, and then buying the better characters to combo them together. It's fantastically designed. Very excited for the expansion material. 8.5 out of 10. Onto the W's. So we're getting there. Wandering Towers. I think there's another Kramer and Kiesling game. You are moving these towers around this ring and trying to deposit your people into those towers. Very silly fun. Good memory aspect. 6 out of 10. Whale to Look. This is another Oink game with a bit of deduction as you're trying to work out where these whales are based on how many fish are in certain locations, but you can peek at these locations. Sadly, it didn't work for me. 3 out of 10. Witness, a game I've wanted to play for a long time. This is a game for only 4 players, so you are quite limited on when you can play this one. But I quite like some of the concepts here as you are trying to work out this puzzle with your teammates, but whispering only a fraction of the information into their ear at any time. It's all about trying to retain information and deduce what the answer could be. It's okay. I'd need to be in the right mood to play it. 5.5 out of 10. Yokai Sketch. This is another little tug-of-war style game, placing cards on these different locations, trying to get these yokai cards as points. A little bit of interaction in terms of messing with your opponent. Very streamlined. 6 out of 10. And finally, we have Zoo Vadis, a reprint of Quo Vadis, a game that you guys probably already know I liked. This one, although I don't like the theme as much, it definitely is a better production. It has some rules improvements as well with these peacocks and unique player powers. I just need to play this one some more based on higher player counts. So sadly, I've not had a chance to do that yet, but still very good game, 7.5 out of 10. So that's it, that's all of the games that I have played so far. That's 92 games, best of them being Jiraku, Patterns, Veil of Eternity, some potential for other games as well, like Terra Pyramides, Carson City as well. And I also love games like Marabunta, Match of the Century, Havilandi. So they're all the best games there. I won't go into the worst games, but surprises for me, definitely games like Raise, Isle of Trains, Big Top, Hooky, Donuts, Harmonies, and even games like Seven Wonders Architects I was quite impressed with. But that's just a quick recap really. I thought, save me going through 200 games at the end of the year. I thought I'd do a 6-month break because it's quite exhausting talking through this many games. But hopefully that gives a nice little summary of what's happened so far in terms of games I've been playing. Still looking forward to other games coming out for the remainder of the year. If you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel and check out my other content too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.